Okay, hopefully I can make this one really, really short, although that don't matter. Um, Borderline personality disorder and cycles of abuse, patterns of behaviour handed down through families. Um, I was forced to take my nephew to live with me a week after his third birthday. At that point, I still had not uh, seen or spoken with his mother, my sister, since the time we last saw each other on the night our first children's home was closed down very, very violently. My 3-year-old nephew lived with me in a bedsit. This was an emergency. I was living in a bedsit when I took him to live with me. He was with me for about 9 months, and because I knew my depression was very bad and getting worse, and because I very, very strongly wanted to act upon feelings, thoughts, and desires to end my life, because of that, I was forced to surrender him to the care of Southwark Council. When I did eventually get out of a mental hospital and re-established the one time I was able to see him, he was at that point in a children's home, Rosebery Street in Bermondsey, and my sister and I grew up in a children's home. I only saw him the once in that children's home because this was between suicide attempts. I had returned to work at that point in day nurseries, despite earlier suicide attempts and earlier prolonged stays in a mental hospital because of those suicide attempts. But I only saw my nephew once in that children's home, and basically I have not seen him again because I was ill. Now, after that, he went to foster parents. I have, the last time I saw him, he would have been maybe 5 or 6 years old. I do not remember. But after that, he was taken from a children's home and given to foster parents to be cared for. Now, today, all the encouragement is to put children like me with foster parents as opposed to putting them into children's homes. And I've described how the pattern, the vicious cycle of abuse has already begun. Years before he was born, his mum and I grew up in a children's home, and all those years later, I was forced to put him in a children's home. I did not put him in a children's home. The social worker arranged all of that. But from the moment he left the children's home and was fostered, he spent his entire time in care being pushed out and moved around from foster parent to foster parent to foster parent, I do not know how many times. Never knowing why he's always been moved on, he always blamed himself. He always felt that it must be his behaviour. He always felt that because of that rejection, because of the way he's constantly moved on from mum and dad to mum and dad to mum and dad, he thought it was his fault. He thought he was not behaving well enough. He thought he deserved to be rejected like that. Fortunately for me, I do not know how, but he ended up going to Cambridge University, where he got a degree. Um, but starting off as a contestant on X Factor, a singer, he is part of a church and he is a gospel singer. And if my memory serves me correct, as a gospel singer, he has actually released albums. He is a singer. But starting with X Factor, um, he is now a TV presenter. He had just become the co-presenter on a TV show on BBC One of an evening that begins after the One show. He was the co-presenter on that program, and that initial program was aired live. And then the next day, Boris Johnson came out and announced lockdown because of COVID. So, as far as I know to this day, that is the only episode of that TV program he made. But it has been repeated often on BBC Two. Now, I was only watching BBC Two because I wanted to watch the snooker, and especially at the weekend, the program that's on before the snooker starts. When I was younger, this type of countryside program used to be presented by John Craven if it was BBC, and if it was ITV, if my memory serves me right, the presenter's name was Jack Hargreaves, back from that fantastic children's program, How. I think that's what it was called. It was either called How or Why, but I think it was called How. But today, this same type of program set in the countryside, he is a regular co-presenter. The main presenter is a woman priest or vicar. I know she wears the collar. I don't know her name. She sometimes presents songs of praise. Well, she's a priest, she would. And on this program on BBC Two, she is a regular main presenter. And when she is a main presenter, my nephew Ashley is one of those roving reporters. Right, let's go and see Ashley at the Fete. And Ashley is one of those reporters that will be tied up in stocks, covered in his expensive suit from head to foot in mud and squashed tomatoes as people throw eggs at him, because it's all in fun, because it's a summer fete. And hi, welcome to the Elmerton Summer Fete and Fair, that kind of thing. And 8 minutes, that's what I wanted to say about the cycle of abuse and vicious cycles and personality disorder. I was forced to put my very young nephew into care. I had no choice at that time, but he went through a lot of horrible stuff that he should not have had to have gone through. Fortunately for me, as I say, he has made a great success out of his life. He has been to Cambridge University and he left there with a degree. And today, it's mainly repeats I'm aware he's in. I don't watch much TV. I'm not a big TV person. I prefer to read horror books and fantasy books. But he was a victim of the same vicious cycle of abuse that both his mother and I, her brother, his nephew, went through all those so many years ago. And that is all I need to say about vicious cycles and how patterns of behaviour and abuse are passed down from generation to generation. Here in the year 2021, And hopefully it's still June. My memory is just not that good right now following a bad bang to the head. Anyway, happy meditating.